London, 1940. The sky is the color of bruised steel, and the air trembles with the distant growl of approaching aircraft. Searchlights sweep across the darkness like frantic, accusing fingers. And there, at the heart of the city, Buckingham Palace, its stone walls glowing faintly beneath the moon, stands impossibly still, as if holding its breath. A bomb has just fallen close enough to rattle every window. Dust drifts from the cornices. Somewhere inside, a chandelier swings in slow, deliberate arcs, each creak echoing through halls that have seen 3 centuries of triumph, scandal, and quiet dread. But deep below the trembling floors, another world waits. A locked door, a corridor lit by a single flickering bulb, and behind it, a hidden room built in secrecy, carved into the earth not for ceremony, but for survival. The kind of room whose existence is whispered only by those who have walked the palace after midnight and felt the hairs on their arms rise. For generations, the Windsors have guarded these chambers, rooms walled off from history books, sealed behind mirrors, disguised behind plaster. Rooms that hold conversations too dangerous to record, decisions too heavy to speak above ground. And tonight, one of those rooms is about to be opened again, just as another secret begins to stir behind the palace's deepest, darkest wall. On a rain-washed morning in 1913, when London's fog clung low to the Mall and the lamps still flickered with a tired amber glow, Buckingham Palace looked almost otherworldly. Its familiar neoclassical facade, Palladian lines, Portland stone shimmering with dampness, stood silent behind iron railings, as if keeping watch over secrets that did not belong to the waking city. Horse guards passed in rhythmic formation, their hooves striking puddles that rippled toward the palace steps, but behind those gleaming columns and orderly windows lay spaces few living subjects ever imagined existed. Inside, the air was cool and faintly perfumed with beeswax polish and old paper. Staff moved quietly across marble floors, their footsteps softened by years of practice. Visitors saw only drawing rooms and gilded halls, but beyond the public route, the palace grew darker, narrower, more intimate. A concealed door, paneled so seamlessly it vanished into the wall, opened to a small landing where the scent changed abruptly. The aroma of polish gave way to stone dust and the faint mineral smell of the lower levels. Historians studying palace records often note that Buckingham has nearly 800 rooms, but the true intrigue lies in those not listed on any tourist map. The hidden ones built during expansions under George III, reinforced again under Queen Victoria, and altered quietly throughout the 20th century. Here, the walls thicken, the ceilings lower. The light dims to a muted yellow, fed by bulbs tucked into recesses carved generations earlier. It feels less like stepping into a royal residence and more like entering the spine of an organism, its private channels, its protective shell. These concealed spaces did not exist for grandeur. They existed for function, safety, and secrecy. And as the palace evolved into the nerve center of the British monarchy, these shadowed corridors would become essential to its survival, especially when the outside world grew turbulent enough to threaten even the crown's most sacred refuge. If you are enjoying this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support really helps us grow and motivates us to keep creating more content. And don't forget to share it with someone who might enjoy it too. It means a lot to us. The descent begins with a quietly hinged door tucked behind a staff staircase, the kind of door a visiting dignitary would walk past without noticing. Its brass knob is worn smooth from generations of use. Beyond it, a narrow flight of stone steps angles downward, carrying the scent of chalk dust and old masonry. The air cools sharply, and the soft hum of machinery, ventilation units, water pumps, ancient electrical wiring, grows stronger with every step. By the time the stairwell empties into the lowest corridor, Buckingham Palace feels less like a residence and more like an underground city. The passage stretches ahead in a long, straight line, its ceiling low enough that tall footmen once learned to duck instinctively. Bare bulbs, housed in wire cages, throw pale circles of light onto the concrete floor. There are no portraits here, no gilded frames or velvet runners, only pipes, metal ducts, and the rhythmic hiss of heating lines that have pulsed through these walls since the system was installed before the First World War. Servants once moved through this labyrinth like a disciplined force, ferrying coal, linens, telegrams, and trays to the rooms above without ever being seen by the royals or their guests. A map preserved in the royal archives shows dozens of branching hallways, storage rooms, wine cellars, communication hubs, and maintenance alcoves where engineers kept boilers roaring through the coldest London winters. Some corridors lead to faintly sloping tunnels that stretch beneath the palace grounds, ending near the mews or opening discreetly behind shrubbery along the gardens. Contemporary staff describe a peculiar sensation down here, the feeling that time flows differently underground, muffled beneath the palace's immense weight. During crises, these corridors carried more than supplies. They carried messages, warnings, and movements meant to stay hidden from the outside world. And it was in the deepest section of this subterranean maze that an even more secret chamber would emerge, built not for servants or storage, but for survival in the darkest hours of the monarchy's modern era. By the late summer of 1940, when London shook almost nightly beneath the Luftwaffe's bombardment, the palace's underground corridors grew taut with a new electric tension. Dust drifted from the ceiling with each distant blast. Light bulbs quivered on their wires, and somewhere deep beneath the grand staircase, carpenters and engineers worked at a fevered pace, carving a hidden sanctuary into the very bones of Buckingham Palace. The room they created was not meant for ceremony. Its walls were lined with reinforced concrete poured in hurried shifts, the mixture still carrying the sharp, wet smell of lime long after it had hardened. A single steel door, thicker than anything else in the building, sealed the chamber from the corridor. Behind it, the light dimmed to an amber glow cast by shaded lamps, chosen to conserve electricity and protect eyes that would strain for hours over maps. Inside, long tables were covered in telephones, code books, and stacks of situation reports brought in from the War Office and RAF Command. A huge wall map, updated with pins and grease pencil markings, tracked the expanding arc of air raids that crept closer to the palace grounds. Clerks in uniform murmured quietly, their voices nearly drowned by the constant thrum of generators hidden behind a secondary wall, backup power in case the bombs above severed the palace's main supply. On certain nights, when the explosions came so close the floors trembled, Queen Elizabeth, the future Queen Mother, descended to this room with measured grace, refusing to be hurried even as debris rattled the chandeliers upstairs. Contemporary diary entries describe her calm presence, the way she stood beside the officers, studying the map as if memorizing the city she refused to abandon. These war rooms were never meant to be known widely. They existed for necessity, not legend. Yet their presence marked a profound shift in Buckingham Palace's purpose. It was no longer merely a symbol of monarchy. It had become part of the machinery of national survival. And as the war pressed on, the palace's subterranean world expanded once more, stretching into spaces older and far stranger than the wartime chambers London relied upon. Long before the rumble of wartime generators filled the palace basements, another network of passages had been carved beneath Buckingham's foundations, tunnels older, narrower, and far less orderly than the reinforced corridors of the 20th century. Their origins trace back to the expanding reign of Queen Victoria, when the palace was being reshaped from a modest royal residence into the sprawling administrative heart of a global empire. The work was hurried, ambitious and often improvised, leaving behind a warren of brick-lined passageways that would outlast the very architects who designed them. These tunnels begin abruptly, hidden behind a plain wooden door that looks like it might conceal brooms or paint tins. Beyond it, the air cools sharply and carries the damp mineral scent of Victorian brickwork. The walls are rough to the touch, the mortar uneven, applied in rushed layers by laborers working long nights under gas lamps. Their footfalls echoed here once, mingling with the scrape of wheelbarrows and the mutter of supervisors urging the crews to work faster, quieter, deeper. Some passages run straight for dozens of yards, illuminated now only by rare maintenance lights. Others twist without warning, turning into cramped alcoves where old pipes rattle and condensation beads along the ceiling. A few lead toward sealed archways, collapsed or intentionally bricked over, where the air grows heavier, tinged with the faint smell of earth. Records from the period suggest these tunnels once connected to the old stables, the kitchens, and even the gardens, allowing staff to move discreetly beneath palace grounds without interrupting the royal household. But there are stretches no one speaks of with certainty, sections lacking proper maps, dead ends that seem too deliberate. Victorian engineers were secretive men, especially when designing for royalty, and some of their more sensitive passages were never meant to be recorded at all. As the decades passed, these forgotten tunnels slipped into obscurity, overshadowed by newer additions. Yet, during later moments of crisis, when fear of attack or intrusion grew sharper, the palace would turn again to hidden spaces, carving out rooms not for movement or service, but for protection on a scale Victoria's builders never could have imagined. By the dawn of the Cold War, when the shadow of nuclear tension stretched across Europe like a tightening wire, Buckingham Palace began to change again, quietly, discreetly, with the kind of architectural caution reserved for monarchies that understood how fragile permanence could be. Deep beneath the familiar halls, engineers wearing plain suits and carrying unmarked blueprints were escorted through service corridors and Victorian tunnels that had not seen major alteration in decades. Their task was simple in instruction, but monumental in implication: create panic rooms capable of withstanding the unthinkable. The first chamber was built behind a section of basement wall that appeared perfectly ordinary. Whitewashed brick, stacked coal bins, a mop sink. But a concealed mechanism allowed an entire panel to pivot inward, revealing a narrow entrance reinforced with steel. Beyond it lay a room no larger than a modest parlor, yet its construction was anything but modest. The walls were lined with blast-resistant plating covered in polished wood veneer, so the room would feel less like a bunker and more like a sanctuary. Air filtration units hummed softly behind latticework panels. A communication console disguised within a walnut cabinet connected directly to government emergency networks. Contemporaries recalled that the Queen's officials insisted on a space that conveyed calm rather than fear, and so the room held a small writing desk, a fainting couch upholstered in deep blue fabric, and a portrait of Queen Victoria, an unbroken line of monarchy watching over the space. These touches made the room feel less like a refuge from catastrophe and more like an extension of the palace above, a place where duty could continue even as the world trembled. Rumors persist of additional panic rooms, larger, deeper, some accessed through stairwells that appear on no public floor plan. Their exact locations remain guarded by tradition and security, whispered about by only those who walked those halls during the tense years when a single miscalculation could reshape history. And throughout the palace, as these quiet fortifications multiplied, the hidden network of those who maintained the monarchy's daily life moved silently alongside them, navigating a world behind the walls that few outside the palace ever knew existed. Before dawn broke over London, when the palace above still slept behind drawn curtains, the hidden arteries of Buckingham Palace were already in motion. Footmen, maids, and kitchen hands moved through narrow passageways beneath the staterooms, their lanterns casting wavering shadows along plaster walls worn smooth by more than a century of footsteps. These were the unseen routes, the hidden grid that allowed a vast royal household to function with clockwork precision while remaining invisible to the family it served. The ceilings were low, the air tinged with the scent of polish, starch, and the faint warmth rising from the kitchens below. In the earliest hours, the only sounds were the clatter of porcelain being stacked on trays, the distant thud of coal being shoveled into boilers, and the soft murmur of servants exchanging instructions for the day ahead. Some passages were scarcely wide enough for two people to pass, their corners angled deliberately to avoid noise spilling upward into the public rooms. Victorian design demanded discretion, and these tunnels were part of that mandate. They connected laundry rooms to linen pantries, staff dormitories to grand staircases, sculleries to banquet halls. A maid could travel from the basement to the Queen's Gallery without ever stepping into view. A footman could carry letters from one wing to another in silence, emerging from a concealed panel that appeared no different from the rest of the wall. Older staff recalled that certain corridors seemed almost alive with the history of those who had worked them. Some whispered about unused doorways sealed decades earlier, or rooms abandoned when technology replaced old systems. Others remembered running messages during the Blitz, their lanterns swaying as bombs fell in the distance and dust drifted from the ceiling like pale ash. These unseen workers formed the living engine of the palace. Every ceremony, every banquet, every royal gesture supported by labor conducted behind closed doors and beneath the floors. In these narrow, hidden passageways, the monarchy's illusion of effortless elegance was constructed piece by piece, and deeper still, beyond the reach of household staff, lay chambers guarded not by tradition, but by secrecy, rooms that held documents, histories, and decisions the public would never be allowed to glimpse. Deep within the palace's oldest wing, past a series of iron-grated doors and a carpeted corridor that grows progressively quieter with each step, lies a section of Buckingham Palace few have ever entered willingly. The temperature drops noticeably here. The air feels still, almost preserved, as though time has been slowed to protect whatever rests in the rooms ahead. These are the private archives of the monarchy, spaces sealed behind thick oak doors, their brass handles cold to the touch even in summer. The first chamber is lined from floor to ceiling with shelving made of dark mahogany, the wood polished to a dull, knowing sheen. Each shelf carries leather-bound volumes stamped with dates, reigns, and discrete symbols used by archivists across generations. The scent is unmistakable. Parchment, dust, and ink that has seeped so deeply into the fibers of the paper that it can never be erased. In these volumes lie royal correspondence, estate records, diplomatic letters, and handwritten notes exchanged between monarchs and prime ministers, some mundane, some world-altering. Farther inside, another door, this one guarded by a lock imported from Chubb during Queen Victoria's reign, opens into a smaller, windowless room. Its contents are not catalogued publicly. Historians believe it contains early drafts of speeches, wartime communications, and documents pertaining to constitutional crises quietly resolved before the world could see the cracks forming. Rumors stretch further still. Sealed envelopes marked only with initials, private journals whose handwriting would be recognizable to anyone who knew the monarchy's most influential figures, and files that recorded decisions taken during moments of national danger. Only a handful of royal archivists have keys to these rooms. They work quietly, often by lamplight, restoring fragile documents and recording their handling in ledgers kept as meticulously as the documents themselves. Their movements echo faintly in the silence, the sound swallowed by the thick walls. These locked chambers form the intellectual heart of the palace, the memory of a monarchy that has survived wars, scandals, transitions, and public revolutions. Yet as meticulous as the archives are, not all hidden rooms were meant for record-keeping. Some existed only for moments the palace was never meant to acknowledge at all, hours when darkness gathered and the monarchy required spaces far removed from daylight and ceremony. There is a peculiar stillness that settles over Buckingham Palace after midnight, a hush so complete it seems to press against the walls themselves. The grand halls darken, the chandeliers rest cold, and the echo of the day's footsteps evaporates into silence. But in the quiet hours, when the city outside thins to the faint rumble of distant traffic, certain doors within the palace open that remain untouched in daylight. These are the midnight rooms, hidden spaces meant not for ceremony, but for conversations and decisions that could not bear the scrutiny of sunlight. One such room sits behind a mirrored panel near the East Gallery. When the mirror slides back, it reveals a narrow passage illuminated by a single bulb that burns low to avoid drawing attention. The passage leads into a chamber no larger than a small study, its walls paneled in dark walnut, its single window shuttered permanently from the inside. Historians who have studied architectural notes believe this room was created during the early reign of George V, a period when the monarchy began to understand the importance of private counsel, especially during growing political instability. Inside, the furniture is sparse but deliberate: a small writing table, 2 chairs placed close enough for quiet, urgent discourse, and a fireplace sealed decades ago to prevent smoke from betraying its use. It was here, according to fragments of diaries and the recollections of long-retired staff, that late-night audiences were held, meetings between monarchs and advisors who arrived discreetly through staff corridors. Matters of constitutional uncertainty, family crises, or the kind of state secrets that demanded absolute discretion unfolded in this dimly lit chamber. Another room, farther west, tucked behind the Queen's private apartments, was used even more rarely. Its walls are lined with velvet to dampen sound, its door weighted to close without a click. A single lamp sits in the corner, casting a muted golden halo. Some refer to it as the listening room, not because it was used for surveillance, but because monarchs came here to hear things they did not wish recorded elsewhere: intelligence briefings, wartime updates, delicate diplomatic messages. These midnight rooms remind us that monarchy is built as much on what the public sees as what it never can. And as the palace modernized, the need for secrecy did not diminish. It simply evolved, shifting into new forms and new technologies hidden deeper within the palace walls. In the late 20th century, when threats against public figures surged and technology advanced faster than tradition could comfortably follow, Buckingham Palace underwent yet another transformation. This time not in marble or stone, but in wires, circuits, and listening devices hidden with surgical precision. Deep inside the palace, past the familiar servants' corridors, and behind a secured steel door marked only with a number, lies a room that few civilians have ever heard described. It is the palace's surveillance nerve center, a modern command post pulsing beneath an institution centuries older than electricity itself. The hallway leading to it feels different from the rest of the underground world. The air is cooler, steadier. The hum of machinery grows louder, vibrating faintly through the plaster. A royal protection officer stands guard here at all hours, his presence as much a part of the architecture as the pipes overhead. Beyond him, the door opens into a chamber lit by a steady, quiet glow. No chandeliers, no ornate fixtures, just the soft blue wash of screens reflecting against muted walls. Inside, rows of monitors capture the palace grounds from angles the public never sees: the shadows beneath the trees along Constitution Hill, the quiet nooks of the inner courtyard, the gates where footsteps echo long before a visitor appears. Motion sensors blink softly in the corner of each screen, tracking activity that would otherwise vanish into darkness. Radios crackle with clipped communications between officers patrolling the perimeter. A digital map, updated in real time, marks every corridor, stairwell, and door within the palace, glowing in a constellation of lines and symbols. The room operates day and night, its staff rotating in shifts, their attention sharpened by the knowledge that the smallest flicker on a monitor could alter the palace's course in seconds. Here, security decisions are made quietly, swiftly, often long before the public senses any danger at all. And yet, for all its modern sophistication, the surveillance center sits only a few yards from something older, stranger, spaces where maps fail, where archives fall silent, where even seasoned staff admit they do not know the full extent of what lies behind certain bricked walls. The palace may be meticulously charted above ground, but in its oldest foundations, there remain places no one can fully explain. In the oldest depths of Buckingham Palace, where the air grows still and the stone walls carry the weight of centuries, there are spaces that resist explanation. Rooms that do not appear on modern blueprints, passages that lead to dead ends that feel too intentional, alcoves that bear marks of doors long sealed. Even seasoned maintenance staff speak of these places with a quiet caution, as if describing something that prefers to remain undisturbed. One such space lies beyond a bricked archway discovered during electrical renovations in the 1980s. The workers who uncovered it described a draft of cool air drifting outward, carrying the faint smell of earth and something older, perhaps the remnants of a long-forgotten heating system or a void untouched since Victoria's time. When the bricks were finally removed, the opening revealed a narrow room with vaulted ceilings and walls coated in soot. On the floor lay a rusted metal hook and a broken length of chain whose purpose no one could identify. The room was promptly photographed, documented, and sealed again under the guidance of palace officials. Elsewhere, beneath the palace's western wing, a tunnel curves sharply to the right before plunging into complete darkness. Archivists believe it once connected to a subterranean service route leading towards St. James's Park, used during the early 19th century when the palace lacked formal entrances. But the far end collapsed long ago, leaving behind a stretch that absorbs light rather than reflects it. Engineers sent to inspect the passage reported an odd distortion of acoustics. Voices sounded strangely muffled, as if the walls themselves were swallowing sound. Then there are spaces no one discovers, but rather senses. Door frames outlined faintly beneath layers of plaster, sections of flooring that echo differently underfoot, small inconsistencies in wall thickness that suggest hidden voids. The palace has been built, rebuilt, expanded, reinforced, bombed, repaired, and rewired so many times that certain rooms slipped into obscurity simply because no one remembered why they were made. And yet the monarchy persists atop this maze, an institution rooted in tradition, ceremony, and continuity. Above ground, the palace gleams with predictable grandeur, but below, the unseen world endures, a labyrinth shaped by centuries of secrecy, necessity, and human hands long gone. The hidden rooms remain not as mysteries waiting to be solved, but as quiet reminders that even the most public symbols contain spaces meant only for silence.